welcome to another edition of the Taylor News Break. I'm Carl Zymak. Today we're going to talk about drug treatment courts. A couple special guests here. Chief Judge Victoria Shackelford and retired Judge Geno Salomone, both from the 23rd District Court. Local court is one of 84 drug treatment courts in Michigan. And before we do a deep dive into drug treatment courts, Geno, you got to bring us up to date. You're retired. You're the only one here that gets to play all day, so to speak. So what have you been doing?
Like other retirees, I would tell you life is pretty good. So get to hang out with my wife more and with the family, but and also still doing. Get to visit as a judge in Taylor's court and some other courts around the state, and also still involved with the treatment court movement with the MATCAP, the Michigan Association of Treatment Court Professionals.
Okay.
In fact, we have a conference coming up next week, and I'll be there for 3 days and presenting on a couple days and meeting with some other treatment court people. So
I don't want to go too far into left field, but can the two of you explain to me, when it comes to retired judges, and I know Anthony Nacita, does he still come in and?
Judge Nacita does not.
Not anymore?
No,
Okay.
Judge Sutherland does.
Okay,
though.
all righty. How does that work? Is that just like a substitute teacher? How does it usually work?
Everybody else, judges sometimes have days off or they have vacation time, and they don't want to adjourn their docket because that's inconvenient for participants, the people using the court. So they'll just, the state will keep a list of who are retired judges that are interested in being visiting judges, and you'll get a call from courts, or you'll send letters to courts indicating, hey, you need me, give me a call. So one of the nice things that's happened to me is because I have we have a home up north, I get to go to Traverse City and be a visiting judge, and that's fun.
Wow.
See something totally different.
Now, my understanding is that, and what I've observed since you've been gone, is that Victoria never takes a day off. I've never seen her take a day off. Well, let's get into treatment courts. Who wants to take this first one? What exactly are treatment courts? How does that work? How would you describe that?
Do you want me to take that
Go
one?
ahead.
It's an intensive probation program,
Okay.
right? So if someone comes into the court and they're eligible for the program, which I think we'll get into later,
Right.
It's an intensive program. It's all encompassing. We serve certain communities. There are all different types of treatment courts. There are mental health courts, veteran courts, and we have a drug treatment court program. So it's made up of multiple components. They meet with the judge regularly. They meet with probation regularly. They go to therapy. They attend, pro-social meetings, and it's this all-encompassing program to help them get into recovery and hopefully stay into recovery.
Geno, 23rd District Court, regional drug treatment court. How did it get started?
So in 23rd District Court is considered what the state calls a hybrid court because we handle both drugs and alcohol.
Okay.
We became a regional. Probably 10 years ago. We'd been in existence 6 or 7 years, and regional just means we were, because not every court can have a treatment court. The resources aren't there, the judge might not want to do it. It means you would be authorized by the state to take cases from anybody in our region, Wyandotte, Lincoln Park, Southgate, Allen Park, and that's the essence of it. They're regional courts throughout the state.
Okay, all righty. And you alluded to the fact it's part of probation. How does that work? How does probation work into it? Does probation supervise it, period, or how does
Well, yeah, we have a treatment court coordinator
Okay.
in our probation department that coordinates all of the treatment. But someone can be flagged for treatment court in a lot of different ways. It could happen at arraignment if someone's in the jail and we can tell that they're, having withdrawals. It can happen, based on their criminal history, if they've got the type of history that would be indicative of a substance abuse disorder. Or it can happen, by the judge or the probation department when they meet with that individual.
Now, who supervises your program within the probation department?
Matt Keys does right now.
Okay, alrighty. Okay.
And he's
That's
new
Tim
to it.
Keys' son.
It is.
Yeah, okay, alrighty. And how do you qualify for a position like that? Is that something that you grow up in probation and then you begin to specialize, or do you come from the outside and learn probation?
Well, I mean, it can really happen either way. Matt's
Okay.
been there for years. He's worked in the treatment court program for years, and he's worked under other individuals that have since, moved on to other projects. So Matt and I are really just fashioning it together right now.
I don't think there's any school there or college that teaches treatment court. We're trying to do that. We're trying to get into the law schools. We're trying to get into the universities to start educating people about this. This is a field you can go into because it totally revolutionized the criminal justice system. But you learn like Matt did through experience.
Now, why do we need treatment courts? What do you see out there?
First thing you see is just a couple of things come up. So when I started it 20 years ago, alcohol was the issue in Taylor. We were doing 400 drunk driving arrests a year, and everybody related to there's an alcohol problem in almost every family. That evolved, though. We turned into an opiate epidemic, and you needed to find a way to how do we help these people get out of the criminal justice system? Because with both alcohol and drugs, substance use disorder, all the criminal justice system has done for hundreds of years is put people in jail. It obviously does not work. These are, and let's keep in mind, we're not talking about violent offenders. If they're a danger to the community, they go to jail. It just has to. But talking, you're a former prosecutor, talking maybe that's 20% of the criminals that are just a danger to the community.
Yes.
But the other 80%, we try and do something to change. And that's what Victoria picked up.
And this isn't just about drugs and addiction. It's really about crime, right?
Oh, it definitely. I mean,
That's
I think
that's why it ends up in your.
It relates directly to crime, but what we tend to see is individuals that have, they continue to come into the system, and we see this pattern of crimes. A lot of people with opiate addictions. We see a lot of retail frauds. And they're stealing from businesses. And I could put them in jail for 90 days, and they get out, and they go right back to the life they led before they went in. Where with a treatment court, we know that it brings down recidivism. We know people are less likely to commit crime if they're no longer using. So, I mean, that's really the goal.
Over the course of time, are you seeing statistics that show that this type of treatment court, the crime quotient comes down significantly?
Oh, we know.
Okay.
We know.
Go ahead. What is the state telling you about
I was going to say, you two live it. So.
Yeah. Well, last year, when they looked at a comparison group, of individuals that closely resembled the people in our treatment court program, our 3-year recidivism rate for people in our program is about 5%, which is higher than the average for most treatment courts in the state, or lower than most treatment courts in the state of Michigan. But the average recidivism rate for the comparison group is about 24%.
Really?
So
I want you to keep that in mind. This is what she's done. When you're talking about the people that come into our program, they're considered to be what we call high risk, high needs. They're at a risk that they're not going to succeed like they would in standard probation. They need a lot of sustained, concentrated treatment. These people, for the most part, have been in the criminal justice system all their adult life. So when Judge Shackelford graduates 100 people from her program, and it's a 5% recidivism rate, that means 95% of these people are no longer committing crimes in the community, something they've done all their life. That's a huge change.
Yeah, big change.
It doesn't, and maybe you can talk about this now that you're experiencing it much more than I am, that doesn't include the impact on the families.
No. We had a graduation yesterday. We have a female in our program. She is a mother. She has a son. I think he's 12, and she wasn't doing a very good job. She was in and out of the system. She was having difficulties with employment, housing, vehicle, and that the type of impact that has on especially young kids is dramatic. And I've seen her son many times over the course of her being in the program, and he was there yesterday for the graduation, and she told me, I met with her privately, with the probation department beforehand, and she told me, that he was really worried about her, and worried that once she wasn't under, the court supervision, that she was going to go back to what he had, the life he had seen previously, and it was so nice to have him there yesterday for the graduation, and before we, started, I let him know that we are always here. If she needs us. But I think that's a anecdotal incident, but I think it's pretty consistent with what we always see, is that these families are dramatically affected by what the person in the program is doing or did before they were in the program.
Do you see these people years later at all? I mean, do you run into people who have gone through the program and maybe are successful?
You haven't had the experience
No, not
because you haven't been on the bench
yeah.
long enough. But yeah, there's been times when suddenly somebody will walk in the courtroom and I haven't seen him for 5 years, and they just say, Judge Salomone just wanted to stop in, or they'll definitely stop down to probation.
Gotcha.
And say hello and just check in. I had one gentleman up until he would send me his coin, his 1-year sobriety coin. Every year he'd mail it to me.
Oh, no
He lives
kidding.
in Florida. Yeah. So it is. I think anybody that goes into the criminal justice system always thinks they hope they can do good and change the world.
Right.
And then this is something you get to see, and that you did something. You go, okay, I did something right with my career. I'm pleased. I can go to sleep now.
I hear you. You both alluded to the violent criminals end up in the system. They have to go in the system. But if they're violent as a result of this addiction issue, and they're still going into the system, is there specialized, even more in-depth treatment or anything? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah. It's a great question because the statute that allows drug courts to exist addresses the type of violent behavior. There are some violent criminals that you can take, but you're not going to take murderers. You're not going to take rapists. There are certain things that punishment has to happen.
Right.
But there may be someone with assaultive behavior. It may be domestic violence, where even the victim of the domestic violence, most of the time the wife, will say, yeah, if you can get him into treatment, then I don't need him to go to jail. You've had that happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
But the statute's pretty specific. It defines types of crimes that are not eligible.
Okay.
So,
Well, let's say we have maybe I'm wrong on this, but okay, let's say we have a man, a domestic abuser. He's violent. He's drug addicted. He comes before you. The system puts him in prison for X amount of time. When he comes out, is it possible for him to go into the program, or is there other? You're saying you guys are kind of going two ways.
I think it can, well, because she's a felony prosecutor, she's thinking in terms of felonies.
Right.
It would be. I'm thinking of the terms of he's going to be on probation for 2 years. He has to do 69 days in jail. You think of 5-year criminals.
well, yeah. He
Once
said
they get out of
prison, not
yes,
jail.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Just where we come from, our backgrounds.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it goes both ways, but.
Well, if they go to prison, no,
Okay.
because it wouldn't be in our jurisdiction.
Oh,
If they go to
okay.
jail
Okay.
for a time
it.
period, then they would be able to be,
That makes sense.
assuming they're otherwise eligible.
See what happens
Yes.
when you have somebody who doesn't know the legal system
Yeah.
as well as you do.
She described it well. That is a great explanation of it. Yeah.
Who's eligible for treatment court? How does that work?
Well, like I said, they can be caught at many different, phases while they're in the criminal justice system. What we're generally looking for are prior criminal history that would be indicative of a treatment or of a need for treatment.
Okay.
It could be, anyone with a second drunk driving or more. A lot of courts and prosecutors' offices will reduce a third offense, which is a felony, down to a second offense, which is a misdemeanor, with the contingency that they get into a treatment court program.
Okay.
So, a lot of people, it just depends on what the substance of choice is, because it kind of changes what we're looking for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does.
I think it's this is a good point to remember. Treatment courts are about a team. So there's a prosecutor, defense attorney, a judge, a probation officer. There's treatment people, and so when a person wants to come into treatment court, the first thing they have to do is be screened. That I think there's a problem here, and then they get assessed. And those professionals tell us there is definitely a disorder here that needs to be addressed, and so the whole team is involved in to see if that eligibility happens. But sometimes it's easy if we're on the bench, you'll see somebody come in with their fourth offense, and they're coming off the street, they're homeless, they're using every day. Okay, I think this is going to pass the screening and the assessment, and it does. But first, you have the professionals, because what makes treatment courts different than any other, I think, long-term treatment for people seeking recovery is constant use of data, constant use of professionals, and reassessing what works, what doesn't work.
Okay.
So it's a group decision.
Yeah, and what I'll say, what has been eye-opening to me working with that population now for a year and a few months is the tremendous amount of trauma that the people in the program have, and when you have this team approach where we meet with their therapists, and I don't need to know everything, but what are you working on? How are they doing in therapy? And what you really learn is that there's a tremendous amount of trauma. I don't think there's anyone in the program that just woke up one day and said, I'm going to be addicted to opiates, or I'm going to be addicted to whatever this substance might be. And it's really eye-opening to see that.
Between the courtroom and the possible participant in the program is often 90% of the time, 99% of the time, law enforcement officials. Now, I know I had Taylor Police on the set with FAN and things like that. How is that working out? Because I know when I was talking to TPD, they were admitting that there have been incremental improvements in all of the doors that open that help these people. But there's also a buy-in that even the police staff has to, because they see somebody walking in to basically throw themselves at the mercy of the system, who are addicted or whatever. They may have dealt with that person 10 times, and it's a little bit of a tough marriage, so to speak.
We'd want them to come to the table. We want the police officer to come to the table. They've been invited to the table, and they should tell the prosecutor, this is what I think, because they would have input in that decision. The final decision is going to be the judge, always, but they definitely want to hear what the police officer has to say. My experience has been in the police bought in. That they were, again, because it was a non-violent offender kind of thing. It's like, if you can help this person and I don't have to see them anymore, that would be wonderful. In fact, one of the first times I ever knew that my program was going to be okay was I had a Taylor detective come in and say, I arrested these 2 people last night. They need your program. I said, okay, I think we're making some progress here.
Victoria, did you see the same thing as a prosecutor? I mean, this has been evolving.
Well, you have to remember, Carl, I guess my background as a prosecutor was always prosecuting very violent crime. I was doing gang prosecutions and homicides.
Gotcha.
We weren't looking to whether or not these people, need a treatment court.
Right,
so,
I hear you. I hear you.
This is very different.
You're thinking in years of prison. How much?
Okay, all right, that makes perfect sense. All right, if I'm walking into the program, and I'm going to be a participant in the program, describe what am I going to see?
Well, you're first going to you're going to be screened, you're going to meet with the probation department, and you have to remember this is a voluntary program, so these people have to, like you said, there has to be, buy-in from a police department or buy-in from there has to be buy-in from the participants, so they have to want the help, they have to, and accept it. So once they come in, they meet with the probation department, they're assessed, we have meetings with the therapist, and then we develop a plan for their recovery. And there's a period where they're put on bond conditions so that they can acclimate themselves to what is required from them, because it really is a lot. When you go from a life of chaos to a life of, it's a very structured program, and and it's very stringent. And part of that reason is to teach them how to live an ordinary, normal, structured life and get out of that chaos. So, I mean, when they come in, a lot of it is explaining to them how to meet that goal and what the expectations are, and get them into therapy.
How intense are those opening meetings? How frequent are they? And then what do they turn into? Do they then ease out, or it really depends on the person? There's no cookie cutter approach to this, is there?
No,
so
phases.
He hits on a place that one of the things we've grown to understand in treatment courts is the individualization. That even though everybody might have similar conditions, it depends on the individual. I think you were alluding to that.
Right.
And so, sometimes that person comes in and they just fall apart in front of you and say, I really need this. Sometimes they say, yeah, I'd love to do this, but we all know they're thinking, man, if I don't do this, I'm doing 90 days, so I'll do this.
Right.
Yeah, I think it depends on the individual as to what's going to happen.
Is there an average length to the program? For the
2 years.
2 years?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay. And does that usually work?
I mean, the recidivism rates certainly say that it does.
I don't know of anything else that's better. I don't know of any treatment facilities, anything dealing with substance use disorder that has numbers that you see consistently for treatment courts like you're seeing.
So most people are compliant with the program?
I mean, some people struggle more than other people, especially at the beginning, but the program is broken down into phases, right? So we have an orientation phase, and that's the early phase when they first come in and they get acclimated and they really start. And it's a bond period where we make that determination: can they comply? Can can they do this? And get them acclimated. And then after that, there's phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So that as they move through the program, the requirements might become less stringent based on their individualized plan.
Okay. Cheaper to put people in the treatment court program than put people in the jail system?
Yeah, so treatment courts have been studied more than any other aspect of the criminal justice system in its history.
Okay.
And time and again, the studies showed saving millions of dollars across the country.
Okay.
The savings are just there time and again. And I want to always go back to when you see someone like Judge Shackelford taking 95 lifetime criminals out of the system. Think in terms of addiction. If you think in terms of addiction as being a hurricane, opiate addiction would be Katrina.
Okay.
And just this wide swath of devastation.
Okay.
And she stops that with her program. That's definitely cheaper.
Now, how do some of the other organizations play into this? Organizations like FAN, the rapid response teams that have been set up. Can you describe that to people who might be listening?
Well, we're both on the board for Families Against Narcotics.
Got it, yes.
So when people are in orientation in phase 1, they go to the Families Against Narcotics meetings. We have those monthly. And we try and always have interesting speakers there for them and resources that are available to them. And that's just a great group. So our program works directly with Downriver Families Against Narcotics because it's an element of our program, at least early on in the program.
Yeah, because this is more than just the offender, because the families are often devastated by this whole issue.
And I don't, including me, I did not understand addiction. I thought I did, but I didn't understand addiction at all until I was a treatment court judge for a few years. And I think it's really difficult with families. They don't know what to do. They feel hopeless. When you're dealing with opiate addiction, there's this tremendous stigma. You want to hide, oh, my child did, heroin, or my husband's doing, Oxycontin. There's that stigma they have to overcome. So Families Against, the reason we say, let's start with Families Against Narcotics, they try and take on that stigma. And so anybody that's listening to this program, the first thing I would tell you, if you don't know what to do, is just go on your computer, type in Families Against Narcotics, and start making phone calls. They're used to somebody calling, and because a lot of the people involved with Families Against Narcotics either are in recovery or they became active because they lost their children. Their children died of an opiate overdose.
Based on what you're saying, are we an over-medicated society?
Biggest in the world.
Yeah. Seems like it.
Far and away.
Yeah.
Far and away.
Yeah, exactly. Pros and cons, okay. Do drug offenders receive lighter sentences by getting into this program? I've read some of the stuff on the internet, and of course, there's a lot on the internet, and you can't take it for granted. You guys live this life. You see what's going on. What do you make of that? That strikes me as agitating to you.
I think it's anyone that's passionate about a treatment court program is going to get a little agitated with that, because the program is so intensive. And you have to remember, we're talking about misdemeanor offenders. So generally, the most jail time they would get is, 90 or 93 days on most of these offenses. And then we're talking about Wayne County Jail and how much of that are they actually going to serve. Or they can go into a 2-year intensive probation program that requires them to meet with the judge, meet with the a therapist, meet with the probation department, attend meetings.
One of the big secrets is doing treatment courts harder than doing 60 days in jail.
Yeah, don't
people
air
coming
this.
into this program,
Right.
they can do 60 days standing on their head. I've had people who, in our program, who've done 6, 7, 8 years in prison. To do 60 days at Wayne County, nope. But they were tired, and at that point in time, they wanted to change. So the question of whether it's weak or not is look at the data. isn't the job of us as judges is, number one, hand out punishment when needed, and we're doing that.
Sure.
Somebody does 10 days in jail, or they're on probation for 2 years, or they do 30 days community service. And then the second part of it's rehabilitation. If we're going to spend all this time and money, can we actually get them out of the criminal justice system? We're doing that. What really should be happening is there should be the tremendous expansion and use of treatment court principles in all criminal cases.
Which is
Judge Shackelford does that.
Which is almost a whole different show.
Yes.
But you're right. But you are right. We missed anything here? Anything that you guys want to add to the conversation?
I think we hit on it last. What I thought was most important is trying to get help to the families. What else is it that you know of? There's response to the quick response teams. Are you familiar with those at all?
I've had talks with Salomone about them, and we're talking about having probation go over and engage in the meetings with the. But I've had contact with some of the people from the team, and they've come over and met with us. So we're working on that.
So that's just the fire departments are going out every day on overdose cases, and they send out a quick response team, and we're trying to get people who have been administered Narcan, who go to the emergency room, then leave. How do we get them help? How do we get them into treatment? And I think that again, a discussion for another day is, how one of the biggest problems that people not in the criminal justice system have is they have that day. It's Saturday morning. All right, I got to stop. Friday night, I OD'd. I've got to stop. They call for a bed for treatment, and we'll have it for you in 3 weeks. Well, guess what's going to happen on Monday or Tuesday? And that's, as judges, we have only some though. I mean, we only can do it if it's legal, but we might have means to say, you know what, with your history and we think you're going to repeat and you might not show up in court, I'm going to put a bond on you when you stay in jail for a few days. But I think more importantly, we have some leverage. You can call and say, look, I got somebody in jail. Can you give me a bed? And then we can get beds faster. But that's for the people that come into the criminal justice system. If you're not in the system, you're still a harm to the community. How do we get them into treatment?
Now, whether you're a family member who's involved in one of these situations or somebody who may not have committed a crime or anything, but who needs help, what do you do? How do you hook up with the program?
Well, I think you should contact Families Against Narcotics. Obviously, I think that's a great first step because they have all of the resources available. And I think I said to you this to you last time we talked. We have resources available at the court. Are you traditionally, in order to be in the program, you have to have a case, right? But if someone walked into the court and said, I need help, I can't imagine a scenario where we would turn them away. We would, get with the probation department and have them make some calls.
I wanted to say, she says, I can't imagine somebody being, not every court's that open. That's the great thing about Taylor.
Right.
Lincoln Park's like that.
Yeah.
You walk in and say, I need help, Judge Shackelford's going to say, go down to probation, they're going to give you the phone number. We're going to call Wayne County right now to see if we can get a screening or assessment. We need everybody to be, and your Taylor Police Department will do that. If you walk in, they'll say, let's get you an angel.
Right.
Somebody that can help you.
Right. Which involves the quick
Utilize
response
that.
team.
They're all in it together. They're working together, so
Right. Well, this has been a pleasure.
Thanks for
Highly
having us.
Always good.
Yeah.
Thank you
Highly
for having us.
insightful. It's always great having Judge Shackelford, Judge Salomone on. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Taylor Newsbreak. Great discussion. For Samantha Rickert and Joe Camilleri working behind the scenes, I'm Carl Zymak. Have a good day, and don't forget to join us on the next Taylor Newsbreak.
Thank you.
Thank you.